Hi, welcome to my new sewing space. Gracie is leading the way. I have taken what was once our sunroom and tried to transform it into a 19th century inspired haberdashery, if you will, or a place where a turn of the century dressmaker would have invited people to look at the latest in ribbons and buttons and lace and all those wonderful things. So in coming into the space, I have a little settee here, and believe it or not, I actually use it quite a bit. Over in my fashion library and sewing library, I often will pull a book down and sit here because the light is really good. And speaking of light, as I do sew in the evenings, I needed really nice overhead lighting, and we had a really dark, very modern looking ceiling fan that had one single bulb under a dome, and so I wanted to update it. I started looking at something called a fandelier, which is sort of like a chandelier, but it also has a fan. And the one that I wanted was $200, but I set an alert on Facebook and waited patiently, and within a few weeks something popped up, and believe it or not, it was the exact fandelier that I wanted, and I got it for $30. And if you can kind of see, once the fan is moving, it kind of looks like a moving wagon wheel, which of course definitely fits my little house on the prairie aesthetic. So speaking of little house on the prairie, I have a few things that I'm currently working on for designs that I'll be sharing in my booth. And this is a sort of table topper, or it could be a doll quilt. And this is for someone that you may know if you are a Almanzo or Almanzo fan. And these are little dog bandanas for your prairie dog patchwork delights. And this is a housewife or hussif. For centuries, people have carried these. You stick all your sewing notions in here, but it can also work as a traveling jewelry case or snack pack. It has a lot of different options, and this is kind of a cute lunch bag. So that's some of the designs I'm working on. So one of the things that I really tried hard in this space is to not have any plastic that is visible or electronics. I tried to hide them as much as possible. And for me, storage that I can see through is best, so that I really know what I have on hand. And for the summertime, I've put out some of my favorite bonnets, and these are all projects. These are all in line for my list that I'm currently sewing. So as I move along and finish each project, then I stick the next one into the next slot. And you can see that I have a never-ending list, and these are also personal things that I want to sew. So I am definitely very busy in my hobby, and of course every sewing room needs special sewing mice that help you. And these were made for me a few years ago by my dear friend Louise, and of course a little pin cushion with a little crow that was by my friend Becky. I tend to be a very sentimental person. This is just several years of collecting vintage mother of pearl buttons, real pearls for embellishments, rhinestones, and a little Harvey girl figurine that my cousin Tara gave to me. I found this. I thought it was so strange. You have these soldiers here, but then it says JMP Coats Spool Cotton, which they had originally sold threads. So I don't know if this was marketed to gentlemen at the time, but it is a mug that you, if you had a mustache, this would help keep your mustache clean. And just other little trims and laces. These have antique handkerchiefs. This blue one belonged to my grandma Ingalls, who we affectionately called Grandma Jingles, and the white one belonged to my grandma Mary, and so I like to keep those close at hand. And again, some more trims and vintage laces, and a friend Jeannie had given me these beautiful buttons from Paris and lace collars. And over here are my very special antique ribbons and velvet trims. And as I said, you know, these are some of the books that I refer to: 18th century dressmaking, history of underclothes, children's fashions, even Tudor fashions, historic. And then I have an antique lace addiction. So I have piles and piles. Anytime I see it, it is at an estate sale. And then over here, these are smaller bits of lace that I've wrapped around little cardboard thread organizers. And then kind of take a closer look through here, and then I'll lead you across the space. Now I know for many of you, storage in your craft and sewing areas is always something you strive for. So in the desk that I got secondhand at a thrift store, I have these little wooden boxes that my husband had made for me that help keep the desk organized. And in the lower drawer is where I keep my hams, additional scissors. This is my starch, pattern tracing paper, and tools such as that. And this is actually a computer desk, but what I did is where the keyboard would normally go, I had these trays that fit perfectly. I found them at IKEA, and it kind of keeps all of the tools that I use over and over. And then of course under here is my modern sewing machine and my modern serger. But by having the covers, it kind of keeps the 19th century aesthetic. So the two influences for this space were the 2020 movie Emma, if you remember them going into the haberdashery shop. And then in the television series called Lark Rise to Candleford, the Pratt sisters, Ruby and Pearl, they ran a dressmaker's atelier. And so each of them kind of used white furniture, white backdrop to allow the color of the ribbons to take center stage. And you may have seen some of the artwork on my walls. This, of course, is my beloved Miss Beadle. Charlotte Stewart, is my dear friend, and she was captured by my very talented friend, Caron. He sells these posters, and paper dolls of Miss Beadle and of Nellie Oleson, and down below in the description box I will provide a link to the website if you are interested in getting your own Miss Beadle. Now, this is actually a tilt-top tea table. There's a mechanism that I can lift it up and push it against the side of the wall if I need more space. And of course, I can also pull it out to the center of the room if I have friends over for a stitching event. I can flip the desk chair around, have this chair and the settee, so that 4 of us can stitch together. I currently have it decorated with an old-fashioned glove and ribbon holder. These are some beautiful garters that my friend Michelle had embroidered. So the ladies would wear stockings above their knees, and to keep them in place they would tie these garters on. And this collection, in the turn of the century, pin cushions would often have a china topper and then a very big full skirted pin cushion bottom. And so my grandmother, Grandma Ingalls, she collected these beautiful pin cushion dolls, is what they're called. And you can kind of tell when they were made by how the doll is dressed. So a fashion timeline. And we even have a few risque dolls that I've put in the back and kind of turned away. But I also like to sit here and have a little drink and do some hand stitching. And of course, if I have anybody that comes to visit that needs to try on a costume, we have this little partition here. And it's a little bit of a tight squeeze, but if you look behind there, you can see a blouse that I am currently working on the prototype, and it will be revealed at the Little House event in Tennessee. And there's also a closet in the corner, and that is where I store a lot of my fabrics. I still have to organize that a bit, so I'll share that with you in a future video. Now, of course, it is hard to get away from plastic, so I found this armoire on Facebook Marketplace, and believe it or not, they were giving it away for free. And I thought it was perfect, because for those more modern looking things, they can be hidden behind the doors. And so this is where I keep my vintage millinery and feathers and bits and bobs for hat making. These are all my vintage and antique and modern ribbons and laces. These are full of buttons, and many of these tins belonged to my mom and my grandmothers, so they're very special to me. And all of my grandmothers and my great-grandmothers were seamstresses, so a lot of these cute little vintage sewing notions from the 40s and 50s all belonged to my grandmothers. And this is in these little nesting boxes. I keep vintage button kits and different types of belt buckles that I find at estate sales. And then these are belt buckles that are like mother of pearl and even older, so they fit really nicely. Now, I still struggle with how to organize my patterns. Like this is for the 1700s, and I just put them in binders. I'd love to know how you guys organize your patterns. There's hopefully a better way. And then of course in the drawers, you won't be surprised, I'm sure, but yes, there is more antique lace. So if you ever have a special project and you're looking for something, it is very possible I can help you out. So I love to rescue things from thrift shops, and then, you know, even little flour sacks and quilt pieces. I mean, how charming is that? My great-grandmother had done that, and so I have, she loved to piece together quilt squares. She did not like to turn them into quilts. And then these are like other scraps of fabric. So it just helps to keep me organized. And then of course, in this area, I have my Ingalls family portrait and my Mrs. Whipple picture that they had made for me at the Simi Valley Festival. And my good friend Stephen Wishnoff had mailed that to me. And some of the things that I need for dressmaking. People will stand on the stool if we're working on a hem. And that is my cutting board. I wish I had a cutting table in here, so I'm still cutting on the floor, or I cut at my kitchen table. But again, it's a work in progress. I will probably update things as I use the space more. And if you have any suggestions or solutions that might possibly help me, Grace is asking my cameraman to pick her up. And I just want to thank my cameraman, Ian, my son, so much for helping me make this video. And thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, I appreciate a thumbs up, and feel free to leave a comment down below and tell me what you're interested in seeing next. Is it a sew along or a certain type of craft project? Let me know. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Over here are some, whoop! Okay.